Narrowing this down to just 10 was so difficult, so let me know if you would like a part 2 to this video, because there are so many more amazing books that I could mention, but these books that I have here have genuinely shaped who I am as an artist. They've taught me so much and they have inspired me, and they've given me the confidence to create. Some of them you have probably heard of, but I think there'll be a few on this list. I hope there'll be a few on this list that are new to you, and something there that will have the potential to spark something really special for you and your art. Right, if you follow me on Patreon, you will recognise the first few from a video that I made around this time last year, actually, where I shared not just books, but also like the classes, videos, artists, and other resources that have made an impact on my creative journey. So I will leave a link below to that if you're interested. They're available on the $5 tier, and if you do sign up, you'll get access to around 70 other bonus videos. But here I'm going to go a bit more in depth into each book, and I have a lot more to share as well. So I'm starting with this category because I genuinely think that mindset is the most valuable asset to any creative. I know that technical ability is something that can be learned by anyone, but something that we might not all think to work on is the commitment, the perseverance, and in my opinion, courage that it takes to be an artist. You know, being able to be wrong and make mistakes and recognize where your abilities aren't necessarily matching your expectations, and to keep going anyway, and gradually build your skills as you go. It's not easy. So Ultimate Artist's Survival Guide. You can see how much value I got from this one just by the amount of pages that I've bookmarked to come back to. I have mentioned this before, I'm sure, that this is Art and Fear: Observations on the Perils and Rewards of Art Making by David Bales and Ted Orland. This book presents the really authentic and relatable and pervasive fears for all people that create things. There's fears about yourself, talent, perfectionism, imposterism, which I feel like I've made up, but you know what I mean. There's fears about others. Sorry, my cat is eating the blinds right now. Excuse me. Is that necessary? Fears about others, criticism, approval, acceptance, the hurdles that we face around ideas and studying and reference and competition. It is all in here in this relatively short and infinitely rereadable book with just down to earth, measured, I'm trying to think of the word, it's like lived in, well-practiced solutions, and I don't know, a level of understanding that is enough to make you feel not alone in those fears and make you feel capable of working past them, or if nothing else, working in spite of them. I can already tell I'm going to get passionate in this video. The next book genuinely transformed my relationship with my art and possibly even with myself. So this is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and in this book Gilbert gives us a really sincere and honest look at her journey as an author, the struggles of self-doubt, and she almost personifies her art, her creativity into its own living thing that needs to be nurtured and respected and understood. This book led me to a much gentler approach and a much less demanding approach to how I work, and it's given me a new perspective on the purpose of what I do. I really learned to love my art and the artist in me. Also, just wanted to squeeze in a special mention to Daring Greatly by Brené Brown, just something that does a really good job of illustrating the power of accepting and harnessing vulnerability and courage in whatever you choose to take on. Making anything takes bravery, and these books, or the things that you learn in them, are like the first building blocks in feeling capable of taking on whatever challenges you come across. So the final mindset book before we go into technical art skills, career and general inspiration is this one. This is Mindfulness and the Art of Drawing by Wendy Ann Greenall. And I've talked about this book and its principles in depth in a past video, which she uses to teach people how to create freely, conquer their inner critic, enjoy art and banish creative blocks. It teaches you how to look at the world through the eyes of an artist, see beauty and inspiration in the most ordinary and everyday things, and just travel through life with a new awareness to the things that are around you. That video goes into so much more detail, so I will leave a link to it below if you want to know more about the transformative effects of finding your creative flow and being present in the act of art making rather than getting lost in thoughts and speculation and self-criticism. If through the first few books that I mentioned you learn to commit to making art regardless of how things might turn out, I think this book teaches you to enjoy the process as you go. So now you know that you can make art, let's talk about how. I have to say, it is impossible to narrow down the infinite number of skills that go into like the catalogue of knowledge that makes up a good artist. So the books that I've chosen for this category each do their own bit of multitasking. In Anatomy for the Artist by Sarah Simblett, we learn the importance of the elements that make the whole and how gaining an understanding of the mechanisms, the core of a thing can help us better represent what we see on the outside. I think that one thing that we take for granted is the way that build-up of knowledge complements any and all work we do. Like, instead of focusing on learning to draw a realistic apple, for example, and like seeing that as a success, just instead getting a better understanding of colour and texture and light in a way that's not only going to result in a more informed apple painting, but a better painting of anything that you might work on in the future. Another thing that this book does in these masterclasses at the end of each section is study the work of masters in ways that teach us about more than just the body. Things like composition, movement, colour, form, even just like the skill of observing and studying masters is something that I think you can pick up from this book. And I very rarely draw people. The knowledge of human anatomy isn't like a pivotal part of my creative process, but there are so many lessons in this book that transcend that, and I think it's really worth a read, even if it's just something that you pick up here and there like I do. Also, if you do draw people, I think there are some really good references of bodies in there. Not necessarily the most diverse in terms of like shapes and sizes, but some good useful poses and lovely detailed photos to study and work from. Right, so that I would say is more of a deep dive into one topic with like complementary subjects coming up wherever relevant. The next art fundamental book is more of like an overarching collection of broader art topics, so it's not so much going into depth, but it gives you a sweeping view of all the like very basic things, which I think makes a good foundation. It's like a handy jumping off point so that you can at least identify what you know, what you don't know, what you'd like to look deeper into, and what skills or techniques you think that you could benefit from knowing and like using in your own style of work. So I don't have a copy on me, I don't know where it is, but the book I'm talking about is Drawing and Painting Materials and Techniques for Contemporary Artists, I think, and it does everything that I was just talking about, with a little bit about like colour theory, observational drawing, perspective, composition, figure drawing, and even some stuff about drawing themes, like themes in art. And the main thing this book does is that it looks at different techniques for different mediums, and then it displays them in action in the work of other artists. So the technical stuff may be a little bit superficial as there's just so much to go over, but each thing is touched on enough, I think, to get to know the basics and figure out if you want to look deeper into a particular topic and where to start if you do. Now, while I was looking into this book, I found another book that is either just come out or is about to come out, and it's called The Artist's Manual, and it's by Rob Pepper, and it looks like it covers absolutely everything you could possibly need to know, like anything you would want to know to get started with art. And I'm just looking at the contents here, and there's like stuff about the fundamentals, line, shape, colour, composition, perspective, and then it goes into all different materials and equipment, so like paper, canvas, pen and ink, all different types of paint, sculpture, and we've got photography and digital art as well. There's even like street art, performance art, and it looks like it goes into those categories, but then again with like more detail on the different techniques. Like there's wet in wet painting in the painting section, cartoon and comic strips in the drawing section, just all sorts like that. There's even a section on selling, exhibiting and storing your work, and I think this does what I was talking about earlier. Obviously not enough space to go into each thing in complete detail, but a great starting point it looks like. So I'm definitely going to buy a copy of this, and if I do make another one of these videos, I will let you know my thoughts on this book in more detail. Also, just remembered, can't mention an art book video without mentioning Taoyi Chi. He is a fantastic urban sketcher with a channel here on YouTube that I will have listed below, but he also has a blog with the most comprehensive list of art books out there. He has read and reviewed like all the best art books that you can think of on all different topics. And I have to say, whenever I am shopping for new books, I always visit his blog first to see what he has said about it. And I think he also does video reviews on YouTube. So I will leave all of his links below. And if you're interested in more art books, you should definitely check him out. Now we're talking art career books, and you can't talk about this topic without having the Graphic Artists Guild Handbook to Pricing and Ethical Guidelines on the list. Pricing your art and your work in art, commissions and things, it's so daunting, and this book really demystifies the business of art. It's got stuff on like copyrights, taxes, contracts, negotiation, marketing. It goes into almost every type of paid art job that you can think of, from like web design, packaging design, billboards, greetings cards, book illustration, like anything you can think of. And then you get essential information about like the best practices in those industries. And then the most useful thing, I think, is the price breakdown. So actual numbers collected from lots of different artists working in those fields that illustrate the types of fees that you should be expecting to charge for that work. And they update the information in these books every few years, I think, to stay on track with like any changes in the market. And I refer to this pretty much anytime I enter into a new project with a client. I'm not necessarily looking for an exact number to charge. It's almost at this point just a sort of validation that artwork has value and you should be paid fairly for your time and effort. Right, now this one was sent to me by a wonderful subscriber, Polo, and this is How to Be an Illustrator by Daryl Reese. The format of this book is great because it covers in a really logical order the elements of a career in illustration, from like building and presenting a portfolio to job hunting and interviews, pricing, self-promotion, agents, but each of the topics is supplemented by interviews with professionals. So some art directors and buyers, but mainly working illustrators, a lot that you'll maybe have heard of. And I find that any question that pops up while I'm reading this book is later answered in the interview section and answered by a person with direct experience in what they're explaining. This book is like having a mentor guide you into and through a career in illustration. Okay, let's talk about creative block. Actually, let's not. We've all been there. We all know what it's like. That like frustration, the exasperation, wanting to create, but feeling almost physically incapable and like wanting to shake yourself and say, just do it. Forcing yourself to sit in front of a blank piece of paper and staring at it, feeling just as blank. We don't need to talk about that, but we will talk about this creative block. Get Unstuck, Discover New Ideas, Advice and Projects from 50 Successful Artists by Danielle Crisser, who actually has a couple of classes on Skillshare, which I'll leave linked below. This book was another gift. This one was from my lovely viewer Shauna, and Shauna, if you only knew how often I reach for this book. So this, like the last one, has an interview format where an artist answers questions on their process, their techniques for battling block and for finding inspiration. And it's the kind of book where you can just kind of flip to any page at random and pick up something new. You have the voice of this other artist who has felt exactly how you're feeling, and they're like living, breathing proof that getting past it is doable. And another great thing that this book does is that peppered throughout are these like creative unblock projects. So this really practical way to get yourself out of a rut. I genuinely think this is the kind of thing that should be on or around your desk at all times. Read a page or two and find that igniting spark to get creative again. Slightly similar, and yet another gift, this time from Carolyn. You guys really spoil me with these gems, and I hope you know how much they have transformed my creative life. This book is Artist to Artist. It's actually directed more at younger artists, but I think that the insights in here are priceless no matter how old you are. So in this book, 23 major illustrators talk about their art, their thoughts on art, and like their thoughts on creativity, their stories, their journeys into their dream career, and they each have such different perspectives and like jewels of wisdom. It's genuinely such a magical book, and you can't help but feel inspired by the words and the images in here. All right, for number 10, we're actually talking about two books, and these books don't have a specific category. I guess it could be colour, but the main thing about these books is that they're just stunning. It doesn't make sense, but my mouth genuinely waters when I look at these books. If you're interested in colour at all, you need these in your life. This first one is Werner's Nomenclature of colours, and it's by Patrick Sim. And from what I understand, when this was originally published, it was pre-photography and like way before colour photographs. And a geologist called Abraham something Werner, he had put together a book in, I think, 1774, but don't quote me on that. But he put together this book to describe colours and create a consistent resource or classification for artists or scientists to refer to when describing colour. And then in 1814, the painter Patrick Sim expanded on this. He added way more colours and he added coloured swatches of each colour. How many times am I going to say colour? A lot, probably. So you end up with these beautiful charts of poetically named and described colours like pistachio green, found on the neck of an eider duck or a ripe pound pear, or red lilac purple, which is found on the light spots of the upper wings of a peacock butterfly. It's just infinitely inspiring and a pure work of art and fascination and commitment. I read that to get the swatches into each book and to have them consistent across all the copies, huge pieces of paper were painted with each colour and then cut down into these little squares and glued in one by one into the charts in each book. And I have to thank my wonderful art friend Dr. Otto Kano for this one, who sent this along with some other really lovely goodies. And she has so many fantastic videos about colour and watercolour, so please do go and show some love. I will leave her links below. And finally, The Secret Lives of Colour by Cassia St. Clair. If the last book does a beautiful job of identifying each colour, this one takes it further by telling their stories. It's really beautifully written. You learn about the key times that each colour has come up in history, the symbolism to do with it, the elements that make it up, and sometimes just really interesting facts associated with them. It's quite hard to describe, so I saved a page that I wanted to read to you. It's the introduction to black, just to give you an idea. Few colours are more expansive and capacious. Like the dark obsidian mirror that once belonged to Dr. D, look into black and you never know what might look back. Capacious means like roomy or spacious. I had to Google that one. But yeah, that just gives you a sense of the poeticism of this book. There is such a wealth of such varied information in here, and it is so much more than learning about colours. It is impossible to read a single page of this without bursting with ideas as soon as you put it down. So that is my list. Definitely made me want to reread all of these books. And everything I mentioned will be listed below. They will be affiliate links, so any purchase you make I will get a little commission, so thanks in advance if you do. And as I said, there are so many more of these that I could mention, so let me know if you ever want a part 2 to this video. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you soon for the next one. Bye.